All right, hi there. Welcome back for another video. This one I'm doing, as you can tell in the title, factors that judges could evaluate for child custody in non-physical abuse cases. So this is very important because some survivors of domestic violence never really experienced physical, while it may not have been physical, but it's very like narcissistic, emotionally abusive, that kind of aspect. I'm having a crazy hair day. And as usual, I have my notes ready to go. The reason I take notes just because it makes me, I go on tangents, as you can see right now, quite kind of frequently. So if I make notes, it helps me keep, I think, stay a little bit more organized. So in the last video, we posted object relations theory, which I thought was pretty interesting. If you want to see that, that's on my channel. I think it's one video down at this point. So this one is based solely about the factors that judges use to typically the judges use to evaluate for child custody in, once again, a non-physically abusive situation. So this is more emotional, financial, controlling, that kind of thing. And I think that's important to specify because abuse is not limited to outward aggression. Abuse can be anything that makes you uncomfortable. Stalking is also a form of abuse. Harassment is a form of abuse. Verbal harassment, written harassment, which is a thing, unfortunately, that healing victims of domestic violence do deal with throughout these court cases, and it doesn't go unseen. I know it's easy to feel that it goes unseen, but it really doesn't. Judges are people, so as much as we're, riddled with anxiety. Sushi. My cat is scratching up my couch as always. She's the best though. All right, so before we sort of become caught up in how to prove that someone is being abusive in a way that's non-physical, we have to remember the factors that judges care about. They consider factors like the child's age, physical and emotional health, educational needs, history of abuse and neglect. The judges may also examine both parents' abilities to parent, stability of each parent, and willingness to cooperate, as well as the existing relationship between the child and each parent individually. So they're not really evaluating how does this kid do with both parents together, because we're filing for divorce, right? Or we're filing for child custody. Both parents being together is no longer an option to this judge. And I just want to take a second before we get too far into it. We need to take a moment and reflect on the relationship that we have with the child who is involved, child or children who are involved. We need to ask ourselves, these are pertinent case questions in order to help you design. And once again, I'm not an attorney, so this is not legal advice. Disclaimer done. This is, questions like who is primarily the safe parent, who's providing medical needs and or emotional needs. That's very, very important. And who's providing the mental health needs. If the answer to those questions, 2 out of 3 is you, then you're in the right place. You're doing the best you can. You're making it. It is a hard journey. Parenting with a married couple is hard, let alone parenting sort of on your own. So the next step, we can look at some examples of evidence that could be considered by the judge. Documentation supporting the claims is extremely helpful. Voicemails are incredibly helpful. Sometimes you'll see that abusers are using social media to their advantage. They're like posting pictures of the kid in question and I'm such a good parent, I'm this, I'm that. It's easy. If you have not blocked them, you need to block them. But if you haven't and you're seeing those, it's so easy to get caught up in the drama that is not important. Facebook is not the judge of your case. Family, coworkers, friends, not the judges of your case. The judge is the judge of your case, right? So I know for some of us that might be obvious, but for some of us who still get very emotionally invested into the drama, it's not so obvious. We get upset. We see this person living a completely false identity online. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, I'm getting told to go, disappear, basically. I'm going to keep it polite and steer away from the triggering language. So, yeah. Always remember to limit your own posts since we're on Facebook. Always remember. Do not make emotional posts. If you're upset about something, anything in life, take at least 24 hours, at least while you're in the healing period, to wait on it. Maybe make a draft of the post, see how you feel, look at the draft later and see if you still feel like that's something that the world should know. 9 times out of 10, it's not. And that's okay too. So, another thing that judges can consider would be witness statements from family members, friends, therapists, or teachers. If they've seen the effects of the emotional abuse on the child and they have firsthand knowledge of the abusive behaviors, they can provide crucial accounts and lend credibility to our stories. We're already fighting an uphill battle because the trauma that we've been through, the things that we've been told, the things that we've been encouraged to do, the things that we had to do or they were going to leave us. And I go like this because they never will really leave, unfortunately. And so if you can sort of find the witnesses, expert witnesses, if you get yourself in therapy and the therapist has diagnosed you with complex PTSD, things like that, those are going to be very, very crucial points and help show the judge that you're not making it up. And I know that that's frustrating to have to work uphill, but the things that we've been through are horrible. No human being wants to believe that another human being is capable of doing those things. Unfortunately, they are, and I believe you, and I'm with you. But judges sometimes need that open lens of, you can say, you can say how you want this child custody hearing to go. You want whoever parent to be the parent, but this is what happened to me, and I am advocating for my child on this court case. You have to keep that mindset. So things like diagnoses really help. Things like family therapy can also really help. And you can't go wrong with either of those, right? If you get a therapist involved, you really can't go wrong. If you have DHS documents showing the injuries that any child in this situation had, gone through, had suffered, things like that are going to help you corroborate your story and explain to the judge, I'm here just speaking, but these are my documents that I have to sustain this information. If you don't already have a restraining order, I cannot stress this enough. You need to go apply if you believe that you qualify. If somebody is a threat to yourself or others in your situation, meaning your kids, you need to apply for a restraining order. I know it's confrontational. I know it's terrifying to take that step, but it will help so much because the judge is going to see this person is claiming that so-and-so is violent, and they have a restraining order to support this statement. This sort of negates a lot of what domestic violence abuser victims go through, which is, he was dangerous, but I love him, so I didn't call the police. You cannot do that anymore. Now you're in it for your kids. It is a business transaction. You need to get approved if you believe that you qualify. Go to a courthouse, find an advocate, find someone. Domestic violence shelters will help you, police will help you, and get those steps completed. Another thing that really helps and another thing that judges really take seriously is police reports. So if you feel that you are receiving harassing text messages, what I did was I started with specifically requesting, do not contact me anymore. This conversation is no longer about the children. Now, you're escalating, you're becoming verbally abusive. And I text those things. I document those things because I want them to leave me alone, not because I want anything else. I want them. The conversation is no longer appropriate and now it's becoming hostile and violent. And I need you to stop doing this behavior. It is not appropriate. So that's kind of my wordage around it. I also, Judge Anthony, I don't know if you guys have seen him on YouTube. You need to find him if you can. He is a prior judge who is still a family law attorney, and he specializes in cases with narcissistic abuse. He gave out a while ago, I think last year, he gave out a free seminar that I did end up attending, and in that seminar he gave us all a list of default responses via text. And one of them that I stuck to that I really, really appreciated was He would say, if I got an accusation of abuse, which is frequent, unfortunately, if I got an accusation of abusing the children involved, I would constantly just say the same thing. You know, that's not true. Because what they're doing is gaslighting you. They're trying to, I don't know what they're really trying to do other than abuse the justice system, which is typical with abusers. They will just constantly try to bombard you in any form or fashion, and that's one of them. So, playing on your guilt as a mom is definitely a big thing that they do. Um, so if you get those text messages, the conversation is no longer about the child or children, you need to start exiting the conversation. And if the abuser gets escalated, which does tend to happen because they have really poor boundaries, you can always call the non-emergency 911 center for your county. And you can Google that too. And I know that some counties vary on their stances with domestic violence. Some people are very helpful. I know in my previous county where I used to live, they weren't the most helpful. It was enough, I guess, to get police reports filed. I suggest starting this method sooner rather than later. And you can always request no response needed. Just tell them, I don't need a response. I don't need a phone call. I just need this documented in case something happens to me. And they will get it documented, and you don't have to do anything with it. Just take a mental note of what address it was filed under, and then you can go back and request those. Usually there's a fee for like printing things out for you. I think the last one was like $5 or something in a previous state, and they had the record. I didn't have to hold on to it. Nobody was any wiser. My abuser didn't know that these things were happening. So it was a great way to sort of start getting things rolling and staying on the safe side, and understanding that if anything crazy did happen at my residence, that there was a record of me calling and saying, you know, so-and-so is acting out of their mind again, or whatever it may have been. So, and that wasn't my case, just to be clear. It's just, I'm just generalizing some things to stay on track. Yeah, so I know that we get emotionally invested and we really want to say our piece, but it's not appropriate for a courtroom. A courtroom needs to be down to the point, nitty gritty, point A, point B, point C, here's why, here's support, and move it along. Judges understand, they're people, but they're also people who do get burnt out, who do get tired, who do see a lot of the same things and a lot of people abusing the system. So the more direct you keep it, the less subjective is the word I'm thinking of, the less subjective. So if you go in front of a courtroom and you have a possible child abuse situation where a child has sustained injuries or police were called because they were screaming in front of a child, which is child abuse, you want to steer away from, well, I did this because he said this and I felt this way. That's not legal. None of that is legal. It's not that it's invalid. It's just not the language that the judge speaks. And in one of the very first videos I posted, I emphasized you need to speak the same language as the judge, or they are not going to understand you. It's like if a doctor is talking to you using all of their doctor language. We don't understand, right? It's the same thing with a judge. They're very nitty gritty, down to the fact, very legal, very point A, point B, point C. And you need to be, you know, like I talked about in that first video, you need to be connecting all of the dots for the judge. The less work that the judge has to do, the better, and the more articulated you sound and the more put together you sound. If you go up there triggered, emotionally invested, scared, feeling anything, hatred, anger for what you went through, which is completely valid, but the judge won't see that as a good parenting option, especially if the abuser is right next to you and you're doing everything they're asking you to do, which is emotionally react in a courtroom. They will win that hearing, and you need to take it back a skosh and get yourself under control. If this means that before your hearing you're going for a 5-mile run just so you're too tired to feel anything, do it. Just get it done. Do whatever you got to do to stay on top of your emotions. It's, like I said, it's not appropriate. Keep it short and to the point. And the other thing, one of the last few things that I've noticed that have been pretty universal for different courtrooms, emails. Text messages can be like hit or miss. They can claim different things, you know, oh, I never got that, or whatever. Typically abusers will do that because they just formulate all these excuses as to why they couldn't get their behavior under control. That's just what they do. It's unfortunate, but it is what they do. So I send emails, and then I make sure to print those emails out and keep them logged. And in the next video, I'll go over my filing system and maybe hopefully paint a better picture of what you could be looking at. I did do that in an earlier video, but I think I just kind of grazed on it. And these are just my recommendations, but the emails can be a bit more credible with judges rather than texting, a little bit more substantial. Regardless of any format, you can tell the judge that you served him with whatever, face to face from a car, watching the attorney do it, and they'll still try to say that they didn't receive it or didn't read it or I didn't know I was supposed to. And the judges see through that. They see that. They are people, like I said. You have to rely on them a little bit. They understand basic psychology, and they see people, they know when people are trying to buck over the system and really waste their time. And that's one thing that will irritate a judge to their core, is wasting their time. If they have a hearing, things like that, you need to be prepared, because if you are not prepared and you're going pro se, you are going to waste that judge's time, and it is not going to end well. They are not going to be thrilled. You have to have everything filed, organized, point A, point B, point C, all lined up, correlated for the judge. Here's your buffet of facts, judge. Take it. I give it to you now, and you decide who's the best parent for my child. And that's how it goes. You can't be, it sucks because it's our kids. I'm asking you essentially to withdraw your emotions from, who could be the better parent. But I know that's what it sounds like, but that's not the case. That's not the case. If you're here, you're in the right spot already. You're doing a lot of research. You're really finding things that are working for you, which is great. And then sort of to go backwards, like I said, abusers are typically, they're the first personalities to immediately blame the opposite gender. I can't tell you how many text messages I've gotten from my own situation where it's constantly blaming like women in general, which is just a very sexist approach to everything. But hey, man, like I said, not my business. That's subjective. That doesn't belong in a courtroom. Moving it right along. So the judge, they see every parent as fit until essentially diagnosed otherwise by a witness expert. So the perpetrator won't get through the entire case blaming everyone else without the judge noticing. It's a very important fact to keep in the back of your mind. Every excuse they make, that's okay. The judge sees it. Every excuse they make, and it's combated with a point A, point B, point C argument, that judge is going to be very happy with you because you're not wasting their time. They don't like to sit there and just be completely pulled around and yanked around as if their time doesn't matter. A lot of times I've seen judges who don't say anything about the excuse making, and they just watch. They just watch the abuser dig themselves a hole, and understandable. Didn't get it. Okay. Did you check your text? No. Oh, okay. Okay. Did you check your voicemails? No. Oh, okay. Well, the attorney or the police or whomever served you with it. Did you read what was served? No. Oh, okay. Okay. So you're checked out of your child custody case, essentially, is what I've literally heard judges say. And they'll understand your perspective more, and they'll, like I said, they'll watch the abusers work their way into a hole. They're not pulling one over. I know it when you're sitting there in a courtroom, it's so different, and you're just listening to all of the insane, toxic stuff that's being made up. Just remember, unless it's something that you did that can be substantiated in a courtroom, it's all smoke. None of it matters, especially if you're coming back at the chomping at the heels with, oh, well, I mean, that's interesting. May 4th, you got upset at me for this, but May 3rd, you no-showed for all of your visit time. Stuff like that. That's what the judge cares about. They care about time, with the parent showing up, who's taking them to medical appointments, who's paying for school, who's paying for childcare, who's getting child support, who's not, stuff like that. So if you can just keep your mind at that perspective of just like, oh yeah, it's so interesting that you're upset that, I don't know, women, for example, something I've heard was women take advantage of people with ADHD. So interesting that you're upset about that. Well, I'm paying for all of the childcare. I'm paying for all of the medical expenses. I'm paying for, this, that, and the other. And you're just constantly like, oh, It's like tennis, right? Balls hit to you, boop, right back. And all the points should correlate with the point before. The reason I say that, and this is something I didn't write down, but the reason I say that is because abusers in a courtroom will try everything to get you off track, to get you off target, to throw the scent so that you are not making the same excellent points that you have been making for the entire case, okay? I need to stress this to you. Every argument that is made, you listen, I would dare say almost blindly, unless there's a paper coming with it, in one ear out the other, and then you come back with what you were talking about before. Always, always, always compete. This is, I hate to word it as a competition, but it essentially is. If somebody is abusing you in behind closed doors, 9 times out of 10, I think the actual percentage was about 72% of parties who are getting a dissolution with child custody involved and have prior complaints or founded abuse allegations. About 72, I think it was 72 to 74% of those victims are experiencing continued abuse throughout the court hearings. So it's a tough pill to swallow, but if that's how if you use these factors that the judge is evaluating child custody for, you stick to the facts, the age, physical and emotional health, educational needs, history of abuse and neglect, stick to those points. Write them down if you have to. Stick to those points. Summarize your arguments especially if you're going pro se. Write those bullet points down, make a whole binder, and organize everything in a file. So your first file would say, let's say, child's age, right? So that's a good one. So child's age, right? Doesn't really need a whole folder. You know how old your kid is. But if you use physical and emotional health, maybe separate those into 2 sections in a binder. But physical health, you're going to want wellness checks, vaccines, any sort of diagnoses, costs of these appointments, all of the cost of pharmacy, medications, all that stuff. Emotional health, you're going to want to get family therapy on board. I guarantee you we haven't been as present as we could have when we're surviving domestic violence. Get family therapy on board. Talk to them about what's happened. Medicaid has a billion options for family therapy. Not to mention, most of those programs come with things like free toddler beds for them to grow into. A box of toys was one of what my programs came with. They sent out a bed, a box of toys, books, got me subscriptions to books. So my son has a book that comes every month and we read it every night and it's amazing. But you have to explore and you have to get these options out there. And then in your next file, you're going to have your history of abuse and neglect, any police reports you filed, any founded DHS investigations, unfounded DHS investigations, emails, letters to judges where you're trying to explain to people. I remember I took one thing all the way up to the State Bar Association in a different state, and I have every single correspondence for that because I want the judge to see that I am doing everything within my power and control to be heard and to have my kid's story heard. Parenting ability, stability of each parent. If you have text messages from the abuser talking about suicide, talking about how bad things should happen to us, because that's frequent, right, with verbal abusers. Willingness to cooperate, those things all need to be substantiated and proved. So if you're going up to bat, you're going to court and it's your first case, start out swinging for the fences. I cannot stress that enough. Make these bullet points in a binder, and every single time that judge pulls you up to talk, you have something. You're handing them a paper. Every single discussion, you're handing them a paper. Keep that judge informed. Once you start showing the judge oh, she's real, he's real, she's real, whoever you are, they're showing me substantiated stuff, and this other person is making excuses as to why they're getting complacent when it's deciding where their child is going to go. That rings true for a lot of judges. So that's my best advice for today, which is once again the factors that are evaluated by judges. Hold tight to that. Do a lot of research. Find out a good way to file things. I'll go over a filing system shortly in the week and sort of divulge a couple different things. I'm still on the fence about it just because, our own cases, privacy, abusers, we know how they work. So, all right, well, I'm so happy for you. You got this. You're on the right track. You're doing progressive investigation. Hopefully you're not behind the ball. Like I said, if you have Medicaid, you have a ton of qualifications. You just have to start doing your research. Google, call people, email attorneys, see if they'll take a pro bono case, explain your situation to people. There's a lot more good people than there are bad. It's just a matter of finding them. And when you do find them, I promise you, they're absolute powerhouses and they will work so hard for you. You've got this. Keep going. I believe in you and you're not alone. Bye.